Before we begin, viewer discretion is strongly advised. The following is for educational and entertainment purposes only. This is the verbatim federal courtroom testimony of the Sean Diddy Combs trial as reported by Inner City Press. Nobody expected him to show up. The court had already heard from Cassie, Will Smith, Monique, and others. But when Ice Cube stepped through those courtroom doors, everything changed. A man who built his legacy by never backing down now stood face to face with the system he once tried to walk around. And today, he walks straight through it. Cube wasn't there for fame. He wasn't there for headlines. He was there to testify. And what he brought with him, documents, voice recordings, names, and connections, made the entire courtroom freeze. This wasn't just about Diddy anymore. This was about an industry, an underground system of control, manipulation, and exploitation, backed by the very people we've been taught to worship. The stories involving Jamie Foxx, Oprah Winfrey, Quincy Jones, and others now had a witness, and that witness was Ice Cube. It was supposed to be just another procedural day. The cameras outside the courthouse buzzed. Reporters shuffled through paperwork. Diddy's legal team adjusted their ties, pretending to be calm while the walls quietly crumbled around them. But then the doors opened, and in walked Ice Cube. No entourage, no press statement, just Cube holding a manila folder, eyes locked, forward, walking through the room like a man who'd been waiting years for this moment. The whispers started immediately. Some of the jurors sat upright. Even the judge leaned back in his chair like he wasn't sure what was about to happen. Diddy didn't even look up at first. But when he finally did, the color drained from his face. "I wasn't called," Cube said. "I asked to speak." The judge nodded. There was something about his voice. Steady, heavy. It didn't sound rehearsed. It sounded like testimony that had been simmering under the surface of hip-hop for 3 decades. And the first thing he said, "Some of y'all didn't realize I'm not part of the club." And that's what pissed them off. The courtroom fell into silence. Cube didn't speak as a rapper. He didn't speak as an actor. He spoke as a man who'd survived the system, watched others fall into it, and finally decided to rip the cover off the entire thing. He began with the club, the one nobody names, but everybody knows. The insiders, the gatekeepers, the ones who smile on camera and control everything behind the curtain. They don't want you in because they like you, Cube said. They want you in so they can control you. And when you say no, that's when it starts. He looked toward Diddy, who was now visibly shaken. That's when they start with the whispers, the canceled meeting, the bad press, the fake scandal, the calls you don't even hear them make. The courtroom hung on every word. Cube said he'd seen it happen over and over. Good people, real artists, brought in, offered a taste of the kingdom, and then told to kneel. They want you to sign the paper, they want you to play the part, and if you don't, they make sure you don't work again. And he made it clear. Diddy wasn't just in the club. He was running it. He paused. The judge asked if he needed a break. Ice Cube shook his head. He turned back to the jury. "You want to know why I'm here?" he said. "Because they tried to break a man I respect. Jamie Foxx." You could hear the reporter's pen stop. Every eye in the courtroom shifted. Cube said it started the way it always does, with the illusion of friendship, the open invitations, the parties, the phone calls from people you never thought would have your number. Jamie was rising talent, undeniable energy, unmatched, and that's when they circled. "First, it's flattery," Cube said. "Then it's favors. Then it's control." He told the jury that Jamie Foxx confided in him more than once, quietly, carefully, fearfully. "They bring you in like family, and if you play along, they call you brilliant. But if you don't..." He let the silence answer. Cube testified about the infamous basketball parties, the no phones policy, the black SUVs, the strange guests. "It wasn't just basketball," he said. "It was a test. They wanted to see who you'd obey, who you'd question, and who you'd protect." He said, "Jamie played it cool, laughed it off, stayed polite, but he never fully gave in." And that's when the rumors started. Suddenly he's too difficult. Suddenly his health becomes a question. Suddenly he's missing from headlines but showing up in the gossip blogs. Cube said the 2023 medical emergency wasn't coincidence. That was punishment. That was a warning shot dressed up as a complication. He said Diddy Circle didn't just throw parties, they built archives, cameras, footage, moments you didn't know were being recorded. And once they had it, they kept it. And they used it. Cube told the jury that Jamie had once called him after a Diddy event. He didn't go into detail, but he said Foxx was shaken. He said, "Cube, I can't talk about it, but I can't unsee it either." If the courtroom wasn't stunned before, they were now, because the next name out of Cube's mouth was Oprah. "It wasn't just Puff," he said. "There's layers to this." He explained that during the height of Jamie's rise, right after Ray, right before the Oscar buzz, Jamie got a phone call, a quiet one, from Oprah herself. She said, "You're blowing it." Cube didn't flinch as he recounted it. He said Jamie was shocked. He thought she was calling to congratulate him, but she was calling to redirect him. She told him he needed to get it together. Then she told him she was taking him to someone who could help. That someone was Quincy Jones. Cube told the courtroom he didn't have to explain who Quincy was. Everyone in Hollywood already knows. He said Quincy has long been a shadow figure, celebrated on the surface, but feared behind the scenes. "She brought Jamie to Quincy's house like it was an intervention," Cube said, "but it wasn't healing, it was submission." He told the jury Jamie described it as the strangest night of his life. He said it felt like he was being prepped, like he wasn't being helped. He was being trained. Cube made it clear that what happened at Quincy's house that night wasn't something Jamie ever explained in full. But the look in his eyes when he tried to, that was enough. And then Cube leaned in closer. Oprah called it responsibility. Quincy called it legacy. But what they were really giving him was a leash. Cube said that after that meeting, Jamie started to change. Not because he wanted to, because he had to. He told me, "Cube, the only way to stay alive in this game is to pretend." And I watched that man pretend for years. He paused. But now, nobody's pretending anymore. Ice Cube didn't flinch as he brought up the next name, Quincy Jones. He said slowly, "Ain't just a producer in this town. He's a godfather." The courtroom didn't move, not even a breath. Cube looked toward the judge with respect. "This ain't gossip, it's truth, and it needs to be on record." He told the jury that for decades, Quincy's name was whispered behind closed doors, revered publicly, feared privately. And what he did to earn that fear, well, that's the part people only hint at in songs and coded interviews. Cube leaned forward. "You don't get as powerful as Quincy without making deals. And I'm not talking business deals. I'm talking soul trades. The kind of arrangements that don't come with contracts, just control." He testified that Jamie Foxx's interaction with Quincy was no accident. That meeting arranged by Oprah wasn't casual. It was a handoff Cube said Jamie was being passed from one handler to another. The room was dead quiet. He told me later. "Cube, it wasn't advice he gave me, it was instruction according to Cube. Quincy presented them meeting as mentorship, but Jamie knew better. He said it felt like being processed, not helped processed. Cube told the jury that he's heard similar stories from other men in the industry, men who vanished from the spotlight, changed their public image overnight or had quiet breakdowns and were never heard from again. Quincy's method was charm, but his message was the same as Diddy's "Do what you're told or we'll make sure you never work again." He then brought up something more chilling. Cube claimed he'd seen old photos, private photos passed around discreetly over the years. Photos that weren't supposed to exist, and every time Quincy was in the background smiling. But the people in the photos, they weren't smiling. He told the court he couldn't confirm everything he'd seen, but he could confirm this. Quincy's not just a mentor, he's a middleman, and the people he answers to, we still don't have names for them. Cube stood tall. "I want to talk about how they keep you quiet," he said. "Because it's not just fear, it's blackmail." He told the jury that Diddy's power wasn't just in his money. It was in what he kept: the footage, the tapes, the secrets collected over decades, compiled from party studios, private jets, hotel rooms, all cataloged, all organized, all saved. They don't just invite you to party, they record you at those parties. Cube looked at the prosecution. You want to know how many people stayed quiet over the years? Ask how many people got a flash drive in the mail with no return address. Ask how many got a phone call from a blocked number playing audio of them doing something they don't remember. Ask how many careers disappeared after they said. No, he said Jamie Foxx wasn't the only one. He knew at least 2 other actors who'd been compromised. At one of Diddy's infamous events, one of them called Cube personally panicked, saying he couldn't remember anything past midnight, but woke up in a hotel with a contract on Audible and photos on his phone that didn't belong there. Cube described how, once, they had you weren't free, you were theirs. That's why so many people smile through it. That's why they post pictures, laugh in interviews, do red carpets like nothing's wrong. Because if they don't, the archive gets unlocked. He testified that Diddy doesn't deliver threats directly. He lets his ecosystem do it. Publicists, journalists, execs, stylists, you won't hear it from him. You'll feel it from everywhere. And when someone tries to pull away, suddenly the gossip blogs turn on you. Old cases get reopened, old. Rumors get revived suddenly. You're unstable, difficult, dangerous toe work. With Cube said Jamie got hit with that exact smear campaign right after he started distancing himself. Suddenly he's got health problems. Suddenly there's whisper campaigns that he's not reliable, that he's losing it. Nah, he was freeing himself. And they don't like when you run. Cube's voice dropped a little, head-adjusted. The mic looked out at the jury. The courtroom had grown colder somehow, like the truth was sucking the air out of. The room I went to, one of them he said. Just once, he said it happened in the early 2000s. A quiet invitation, not a party flyer, not a press invite. Just name a time in a car waiting outside. His hotel, they said it was a networking night. That's what they always call it. Cube said he arrived at a massive Beverly Hills mansion gate closed behind him, phones taken at the door, and once he stepped inside, it wasn't a party. It was an operation, he described. Low lights, no music, just ambiance, people whispering, security. At every corner and most chilling rooms that weren't labeled just doors, some cracked open, some with strange sounds behind them. He said here, cognized people, A-listers, some looking dazed, some looking terrified, and then he saw something he never forgot. I saw a man I admired, one of the biggest names in the game, slumped over on a couch, eyes wide open, and a camera was pointed right at him. Cube said he turned around and left, didn't say goodbye, didn't ask questions, just walked out and got back in the car. The next day he got a call-blocked number. All it said was, "We saw you leave." He said nothing ever came of it, but he never went back because I knew what it was that wasn't a party, that was a trap. Cube looked straight at Diddy and said, "You didn't just ruin lives, you filmed them first." The judge had toe paused. The court reporters were shaking. Diddy's lawyer whispered furiously into his ear, but Puff didn't respond. He stared ahead, jaw locked, because this time cameras weren't his. By the time Ice Cube reached this point in his testimony, the courtroom no longer felt like a courtroom. It felt like a confession booth, a reckoning. Even Diddy's attorneys had stopped objecting. The damage had already been done and Cube wasn't finished. They didn't just try to silence Jamie Foxx, he said they tried to erase him. He told the jury that in Hollywood, silence isn't requested, it's enforced through patterns, through pressure, and through precision attacks that make it look like someone just slipped off their radar. But behind the scenes, it's surgical. After Jamie walked away from those parties, things started happening. Cube said roles, he was confirmed, forgone rumors popping up everywhere one day. He's a legend, the next he's unreliable, difficult, problematic. Cube paused. Let that word hang. They use that one a lot, problematic. It's code for he said no. He pulled out a document, a calendar of meetings and bookings. For Jimmy, between 2019 and 2021, the jury looked confused until Cube highlighted a series of cancellations, back to back to back, all tied to execs with direct connections to Bad Boy Revolt TV or one of Diddy's satellite companies. Coincidence? Not a chance. He described how Jamie's Netflix projects were pushed, how scripts he was set to produce were suddenly stuck in legal, how collaborators he'd worked with for years suddenly stopped answering, and then came the health scare. Cube said quietly. He looked down for a moment, then continued. You really think that was natural? That a man like Jamie in peak shape just collapses during filming? That it happens right after he started making noise about what he saw? Cube didn't. Accuse, he implied, but the weight behind his words made it clear what he believed. I don't know what happened in that hospital, he said, but I know fear and I know retaliation. And that wasn't just a medical incident, that was a message. Cube claimed Jamie was being punished, not just for what he said, but for what he refused to be a puppet, a mouthpiece, a tool. He said Jamie was offered multiple chances to come back into the fold. They offered him roles, they offered him press redemption. All he had to do was smile, shake hands, and act like nothing happened, but Jamie refused. That's when they tried to replace him. That's when the clone rumors started. That's when people started asking if he was even alive. That's what they do. They deconstruct you piece by piece until even your fans don't know what's real. Cube's voice dropped again. That's how they keep their power, not with fear, but with erasure. There's something y'all need to understand, Cube said as the jury leaned forward. This ain't about music. It's not even about parties. It's about culture engineering. He looked around the courtroom, locking eyes with the prosecution. They don't just control what you hear, they control what you believe. What you fear what? You Become Cube explained that Hollywood, at least the version run by the club, is a machine-a system designed to weaponize identity trauma and rebellion and sell it back to the people as entertainment, you think? It's all freedom, all expression. Nah, it's scripted. Every album they push, every movie they fund, it's by design. He paused, then dropped the line that sent ripples through the room. The same people who push prison music own the prison. That quote Cube explained was one of the things Tupac tried to warn the world about before he was silenced, before he became too political, before he started talking about who really runs the industry. Cube testified that Diddy wasn't just a bad actor, he was a conduita, chosen face handpicked to glamorize the very lifestyle that destroys people. And anyone who didn't follow suit, they got no airtime, no marketing budget, no label support. You rap about building something, you get shelved. You talk about healing, you get labeled. Corny. Cube even alleged that artists with spiritual or ranty industry messages had their studios, raided their hard drives, hacked, and their accounts frozen. The club didn't just want you entertaining, they wanted you obedient. He connected it back to Diddy's parties, said they were more than indulgent playgrounds. They were vetting rooms, places where artists were tested on camera, and if you played along, you were protected. But if you stepped out of line, you got framed or disappeared. Here, Fearenced, a known singer who once refused to sign with Bad Boy after a party, invitation within months, she was painted as unstable, dropped from her label, and quietly written out of every award show. You think that was her just being erratic? Nope. Punishment. Cube looked back at the jury and said what nobody else had dared to say. So far in the trial, y'all sitting here trying to figure out what Diddy did, but the question you need to ask is, how many people helped him do it? And in that moment, the trial stopped being about Diddy alone. It became a mirror. The judge asked if he wanted to give closing word. Scube nodded. He stepped away from them, then walked to the center of the courtroom and stared directly at Diddy. You built a kingdom out of other people's silence. He said, you called it success, but it was slavery. Diddy didn't move. He was pale, eyes locked. Cube continued, you didn't just throw parties. You created prisons, emotional ones, psychological ones, and you filled them with people who thought they were being celebrated but were really being captured. He turned toward the gallery. To every artist watching this, to every kid dreaming of making it in music or film, ask yourself who's standing at the door of that dream, who's holding the key, and what do they expect from you before they'll let you in? He took a breath. He stayed quiet for a long time because it thought I had to, because I thought staying quiet made me safe. But you know what? Staying quiet does. He turned back toward the jury. It makes you a collaborator. He opened the folder he brought in, removed a photograph. This was, in 1991, bright-eyed, believing I could change the game, that I could make art without losing my soul. He held up the photo, then slowly tore it in half. That version of me didn't survive, but this version, the one who came here today, he ain't afraid of none of you anymore. He walked back to the stand, placed the folder down, and looked at the judge. I don't know what you'll do with all this, but now you know, you all know, he faced Diddy one last time, and you thought nobody would talk, that you had it all locked down, but now the door's wide open. He stepped down, walked past the gallery, didn't look at the press, didn't look at the jury. And just before he exited, he turned his head slightly and said, "They didn't kill Jamie. They didn't kill me. They just made us." Louder. And with that, he left the courtroom, but what he left behind would echo forever.